and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming the program director at the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, the one and only Ben Cameron!
Thank you. God. Lord help me. Thank you. Thank you all very much. You know, as a North Carolina native, I am always thrilled to be back in my native South. Knowing that as I do, I don't have to explain to you that grown men who call their fathers daddy do so out of emotional strength rather than mental deficiency. That true haute cuisine is a plate of barbecue, a side of hush puppies, a jar of sweet tea, and a Krispy Kreme donut. And that the three most important words in the English language, especially during March Madness, are anybody but Duke. Yeah, oh, there's a blue devil in the room. I can feel it. So, you know, your presence here today assures me that on some level you are already arts supporters. And as art supporters, you probably understand the value arguments we frequently use in public circles. Our economic power, for example, that in cities the size of Atlanta, we typically leverage $3 billion of economic activity and employ 45,000 full-time jobs, 80% of which are outside the art sector proper. Our employment of construction workers, accountants, bartenders, hotel managers, the people who sell us the fabric where we buy the fabric for costumes, the piano tuners who tune the instruments, the printers who print the programs. And you know that if the arts are imperiled, the entire local small business community will feel the aftershocks as well. You probably already understand our role in education, promoting as we do discipline, teamwork, higher test scores, dramatically higher rates of graduation, greater self-confidence, greater self-esteem, and our special power in providing nonviolent alternatives for students seeking self-expression and fulfillment. And you probably understand our value in promoting healthy, inclusive societies, a value documented by UCLA's study that a kid who has been in a play is 42% less likely to tolerate racist behavior than a kid who has never been in a play. And you probably remember that after Columbine, those kids after that shooting said, you know, the one place on this campus we came together, the one place we found community, the one place these cliques lost their divisive power was the Performing Arts Center on campus. And so like us in the arts, you can stand up and say to anybody, if you care about local economic vitality for Atlanta, you must care about the arts. If you care about the educational achievement of your children, you must care about the arts. If you care about a diverse, inclusive society, you must care about the arts. That said, it would be disingenuous of me to stand before you and suggest this is an easy time. Because indeed, government giving budgets are down, foundation giving budgets are down, corporate giving has entered a kind of free fall, and with rising competition from education and environment and social services and more, the share of the charitable dollar to the arts is diminishing. But at least for a few minutes, I'd like to suggest to you that the biggest crisis we face in the arts is not economic at all. You know, to explain, in 2006, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, where I work, convened more than 700 artists, managers, and administrators in 22 meetings in 14 cities to say essentially, what are the most pressing issues you face? 2 years before the economic downturn, we heard about audience erosion in every field. Declines in subscription sales, declines in single ticket sales, rise in churn, audience turnover, with as much as 75% of an audience on any given evening being there for one event of the year and not coming back. 2 years before the economic downturn, we heard audiences were overscheduled and exhausted. 42% of men and 55% of women said, I am too tired to do the things I want to do. And the number one answer to how do you look forward to a free evening was not going to the museum or going to a play, going to a movie, or having dinner with friends. The number one answer is, I want a good night's sleep. After decades of growth, our audiences are dwindling. And our rise in expenses, driven in many cases by cost of lumber and paper and rise in fixed cost of facility insurance and health care and more, in tandem with declines in funding, means escalating ticket prices that threaten to place the arts outside of so many in our communities we want to reach and serve. 2 years before the economic downturn, we heard about the triply disorienting impact of technology. We've heard about its technology as competition, as shaper of customer expectations, as redefiner of cultural economics. We live in a time where I hope you know that by the time she graduates from college, a college senior will have spent 20,000 hours online and an additional 10,000 hours playing video games, where our internet leisure time consumption has more than doubled in the last 3 years alone, and where video games now outsell movie and music recordings combined and are reviewed in the arts and culture section of the New York Times. Thanks to the internet, we can get jeans tailor-made to our own bodies at 3 in the morning. They're delivered to our doorsteps. Expectations of personalization, customization, and convenience that the live arts, which have set curtains, set hours, set venues, attendant inconvenience of travel, parking, and the like, simply cannot reach. And what's it going to mean in the future when we say that symphony, opera, ballet ticket is $50, $75, $100, when our audiences are used to downloading culture on demand 24/7 for 99 cents a song or for free? These are huge issues, but we are not alone. We are engaged in this country in a fundamental recalibration of culture and communications. It is shaking the newspaper industry. It is shaking the book industry. It is shaking higher education with the emergence of online universities. And in a taste of what may be yet to come, it has left recorded music distribution, remember Tower Records, in disarray. Surely we know the words when Adrian Rich, the poet, says, "We are out in a country that has no language, no laws. Whatever we do is pure invention. The maps they gave us are out of date by years." And aren't you glad you invited me here to brighten your day? You know, sometimes frames are useful to me, and 3 years ago I was at a conference in New York and somebody raised their hand and said, you know, what would we do differently if we thought, boy, the moment we're in is the equivalent of the religious Reformation of the 15th century. What if we are in the arts Reformation? I thought, boy, that's a great question. You know, if you know your history, you know that the religious Reformation was made possible by technological reinvention. The printing press meant suddenly everyone could have a Bible. You nailed something on a door in Germany, it could be produced en masse and be all over the continent in days. And we are in the midst of a technological revolution and a redistribution of knowledge. The religious Reformation decimated and destroyed old business models. As Russell Willis Taylor has said more than once, the Reformation was a great time to be a land buyer and a rotten time to be a monastery. And on some level, we need to ask ourselves whether the symphony orchestra model, for example, might not indeed be the monastery of today. But even more profoundly, the religious Reformation at its very heart questioned the necessity of intermediation in a divine experience. Why do I need a priest to intercede for me with God? A question that's finding direct parallel in the question we hear in many places, why do I need a professional artist to have a creative experience? Indeed, while arts attendance is plummeting, arts participation, people writing their own poetry, singing in choirs, making their own movies. Show me a 14-year-old not hard at work on her second, third, or fourth movie. Arts participation is exploding at an exponential rate. This moment of reformation is not a threat, it's an invitation. It's an invitation for us to think more expansively beyond where our obsessions have been. Yes, we have been obsessed with the performance or the exhibit. Yes, we've been obsessed with contextualizing that or introducing audiences to that or talkbacks or more. But forward-thinking organizations are asking new questions. How do we engage audience in co-creation or selection of the work to be presented? A question that is at the heart of demandit.com, where anybody can say, we demand to see Bruce Springsteen, and he will be brought to Atlanta. A question at the center of the Denver Museum of Art's First Persons Museum, where anyone can post an image online that's meaningful to him or her, leading to a profound discussion about visual arts in that community in a new way. Forward-thinking organizations are thinking about co-creation. How do I engage these arts participants in the creation of the work itself? Questions that are at the center of the Baltimore Symphony's Rusty Musician programs, where formerly trained yet now avocational musicians, people who are now lawyers or doctors or whatever, play the Mahler alongside the symphony musicians at select concerts, a format that not only is engaging entirely new audiences, but that much to their own surprise has reanimated and re-inspired the professional musicians who initially resisted it, but who are deeply inspired by the dedication, the passion, and commitment the avocational citizens bring. Forward-thinking organizations are surrendering their space to flash mobs and raves and turning it over for festival formats to vibrant communities of participants, knowing sometimes that a lightly facilitated touch produces the best allegiance and most remarkable results of all. Now, this spectrum, of course, isn't for everybody. And what forward-thinking organizations are doing are trying to ask, how do I find and often value within this broader array of activities? And indeed, I think every organization is asking itself, what if our job for the future is no longer just to produce work to be enjoyed, but to hold responsibility for social orchestration in which the performance is a piece, but only a piece of what we're called to do? What if the future asks us not only to provide products to be consumed, but experiences that will be springboards to our audience's own creativity? What would we do differently if we thought of ourselves less as arts institutions and thought of ourselves as platforms designed to aggregate creative energies? Now, for those of you in the arts, let me just say, this is hard work, and I don't want to promise you any other. It demands leadership and planning, experimentation, and patience. And God knows we are going to fail as often as we succeed because we are learning as we go. It will require us to place the audience at the center of our mission, not the periphery, at the center. As the great Lisa Adler of Horizon Theater said years ago, and she was the first to say it I ever heard, there is a profound difference between a mission statement of to produce the great plays and a mission statement of to connect audiences to great plays. A difference that, if taken seriously, will change every program, every structure, every dollar spent, every hire made. This will provoke anxiety. If you're not anxious, you're not really thinking about change. And indeed, let me just say, the resistance is going to be highest among your existing artists, your existing board, and your existing staff. And that's not out of recalcitrance. That's because they have given you their lives, because what you have done to date has such profound meaning to their lives. Nobody will be closer to the past than they will be. And rather than dismissing them, how do we focus them on the value we're trying to instill rather than the delivery mechanism to date? A reframing of value that is at the core of leadership for the future. And in this time of constrained resources, it will not begin with what will we do next. It will begin with what will we stop doing to give ourselves the time and the energy and the money to pursue this urgent work that lies ahead. You know, for those of you who exist in the business world or live outside the arts, let me just say clearly, our ability to prosper and do this rests entirely on your shoulders. And this is the time to stop being an arts supporter and start being an arts activist. You know, that may sound amorphous, so let me be really clear. When the arts are caught in controversy, those of you who know my history know I was at the NEA during the NEA for Maplethorpe and Serrano, etc. So this is from personal experience. In moments of controversy or public funding, the voice of the arts professional is perceived as too self-interested to be heard. It is the bank president, it is the real estate agent, it is the stay-at-home mom whose voices can be heard when the artist's voice cannot be. And arts activists lobby, they go to City Hall, they write letters to the editor. Arts activists leverage their sphere of influence. As the former head of charitable giving for Target stores, which I was for several years, I can tell you firsthand it was very easy to look across the table to the arts people and say, boy, you know, it's really, we're out of money, I'm really sorry. When the arts professionals had brought a board member with them on the funding call, not only did that make a powerful statement to me about how important the group must be for the arts, for the board member to give up this time, but where the board member knew my CEO, the money was magically found. Arts activists take a kid to every performance or exhibit unless there's a context reason not to. We know that anyone who has a meaningful relationship with the arts when pressed will typically cite an experience before the age of 18. If we don't have you by the age of 18, the probability we'll get you is minuscule. Even better, they take a kid and a kid's friend because it is not only parental example, it is peer reinforcement that instills life allegiance to the arts forever. Arts activists give their time. They serve on boards. Boy, that board conference session was fantastic. They offer their best counsel. They give generously and increase their gifts every year, and they urge other people to do the same. In the future, give or get is not good enough. It is give and get for every single person in this room. And whereas I know that's threatening, and soliciting funding is not anybody's favorite thing to do, my perspective on this was changed irrevocably when I did a thing called the AIDS Ride in Atlanta in the 90s, where I would every summer ride my bicycle from Minneapolis to Chicago to raise money for HIV and AIDS, a 500-mile ride. There were two givens about that ride. You had to be 18 for liability purposes. You had to raise $2,500. You raised $24.99, you stayed home. You had to raise $2,500. Every person on the ride did it. And my second year, I was pedaling along in Wisconsin beside an 18-year-old who was struggling to keep up. And I looked down, and this kid's wheels were a blur of yellow color. And I said, what is that? And he said, well, you know, they're Post-it notes. Now, not playing cards that we used to do for that, not playing cards, Post-it. And I said, well, what gives? And he said, boy, you know, I really wanted to do this ride. I'd never raised a dime in my life. What did I know? And then I got this idea that if you gave me $150, which I thought all of my friends could do, I would make you a spokesperson. And each Post-it name is the note of a different donor. He said, I'm taking my donors on the ride with me, which I found powerful. And when I get to Chicago, I'm taking apart the wheels and mailing every donor their own spoke. That kid raised $17,000. And if a kid who has never raised a dime in his life can raise $17,000 for something he cares about, there is no limit to what a properly motivated and creative group of arts activists can accomplish. Now, you know, I hope that your arts activism has been inspired by the transformative power of the arts, that you have climbed a set of stairs in a museum and seen an explosion of color and your life has been changed, or you've watched a dancer vault from the wings and your life has been changed, or you've been seated in a dark room, the lights have come up and you've seen a musician play or an actor speak and your life has been changed. But more powerfully, this activism must spring from your love for Atlanta, because however important the arts have been, they will be more important going forward. Economically, look at the burgeoning growth of creative industries, all of which are informed by design and arts ad infinitum. But in any industry, as we move to consensual models of leadership, emotional intelligence, the ability to motivate, to instill commitment, integrity, collaboration will be key to leaders. And those are the very things we take every time we take the stage or teach a child. The arts will be more important educationally. Math and science emphasis education, however important, is not enough for the integrated left-right brain thinking the future demands. As Mike Huckabee, of all people, has said, math and science education without the arts is like making a database without a server. The arts will be more important as we move to a pluralistic, diverse society. As Francois Matarazzo has observed, the arts enable people with non-majority lives to represent themselves to the majority, to be the subjects of their own experience rather than the objects of characterizations by others. especially in this time where whatever side of the aisle you sat on for the last election, we agree this was the most vituperative, divisive election that any of us can remember, especially in a time where media encourages a kind of humiliation ethic through reality TV, and even train station announcements to report suspicious behavior require us to look at our fellow human being with hostility and fear and suspicion. The arts, whatever we do, invite us to come together with people not like ourselves and look at our fellow human being with generosity and curiosity. God knows if we have ever needed that capacity in human history, we need it now. It is on that note that I salute you all not only as arts activists, but social activists, pledged as you are through your support of the arts to a world characterized by tolerance, inclusion, compassion, and hope. I'd like to promise you the hand of the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation is outstretched to you both now and for years to come. And I'd like to thank you for your kindness and your patience in listening to me this afternoon. Thank you and Godspeed.